So when we decided to build the Beast Gaming PC, a lot of you had questions about the components that we used. In case you haven't already seen those videos, don't forget to click the link on the top right, and we'll also leave them in the description below. In this video, we tackle our 10 NVMe SSDs that we bought, and we're going to figure out how to build a RAID system. So stay tuned, let's get this started. When we started the build, our intention was to use two of these ASUS M.2 X16 cards with 8 drives in them and 2 drives directly on the motherboard. There's a reason why we picked the CPU that we did. When we started to build this gaming PC, a lot of you said that we used the wrong CPU because it's not a gaming CPU, but we had several other requirements from the CPU. Now, one of the most important requirements for us from this CPU were the 44 available PCIe lanes. Now, these lanes are crucial because we're going to be adding a lot of PCIe components. Also, these cards, they take X16 slots, so that is required. But we ran into a problem. The ASUS M.2 16 cards require something that is called slot bifurcation, which means that you have to go into your motherboard's BIOS and convert the one X16 slot to behave as 4 independent X4 slots. This is a great feature and most modern motherboards have it, but this card is mostly compatible with ASUS motherboards, which we found out after buying the cards, and also the fact that our Gigabyte motherboard doesn't have the slot bifurcation feature was one of the big problems or the big hurdles that we ran into. So these cards, they unfortunately don't work. We did figure out another brand that will work without the required slot bifurcation, and HighPoint makes these NVMe SSD RAIDs for PCIe slots which don't require the slot bifurcation, and whether you're running on an X16 or an X8, it will still detect those drives. But the problem, as most other problems, is that those cards are not available in India. So when I went for WWDC this year, I bought those cards and I brought them to India. We then transferred the SSDs from the ASUS M.2 X16 cards onto the new HighPoint drives. I also noticed that these new NVMe RAIDs have really good thermal management and really good dispersion because of the large and heavy-duty heat sinks that are already provided. There's also an onboard cooling fan, much like the ASUS cards. So it was overall a pretty positive approach. Another thing that was wrong with the newer cards is the price, because the ASUS cards were 1/8 the cost of these cards. So this was another expensive add-on to our already expensive build. However, we needed to get the RAIDs going. Now, since 2 of our X16 lanes were already taken by GPUs, what we decided to do was remove one 2080 Ti from the motherboard and install the new HighPoint RAID in the 3rd slot on the motherboard, and then we booted up with one RAID drive on the motherboard. Now, 4 of these NVMe SSDs that were in the RAID drive were detected, and we were able to initialize them and format them and create a single drive using the Windows storage spaces. We were also able to manage and create a RAID 0 on it, and then when we ran a benchmark, we again ran into a problem. We were still getting 3,500 megabytes per second versus the expected around 10 gigabyte per second, which would be from a RAID 0 of 4 NVMe SSDs. Turns out that when Windows creates a RAID in the storage spaces, it creates a consolidated storage and not as much a RAID 0, which gives you the additional speeds. Also turns out that HighPoint makes drivers, which we needed to download, and also a RAID utility, which also we needed to download. So we installed these 2 things and we were able to jump into the HighPoint RAID utility and create a RAID 0 drive from the utility. And then we were able to format the drives and create a new simple partition. We ran Atto, and to our surprise, not only did we cross 10 gigabyte per second, we actually crossed 12 gigabyte per second. So then we installed the second RAID drive onto the 5th PCIe slot as recommended by the motherboard's manufacturer, and we booted the machine up. We got the drives and we were able to create a single partition with 8 terabytes of storage on RAID 0 using HighPoint's own hardware RAID utility. And then we ran Atto, and we were still getting anywhere from 12 to 13 gigabytes per second. So we didn't see a much larger improvement in speed. And turns out that what happened was that because we didn't have enough PCIe lanes, we had 44 lanes to begin with. 4 of those went to our main boot drive, which is also an NVMe SSD. 16 went to the graphics card, 16 went to the first RAID drive, and then we were left with only 8 PCIe lanes, which were given to the second RAID drive, which then, because it was running on X8, was not getting the full power of the PCIe lanes, and hence we were not getting the speed. Luckily for us, we do have a lot of random hardware at iGyaan, and the motherboard has Thunderbolt 3 ports. So we did have an Akitio node which uses a Thunderbolt 3 port to create an external GPU. We popped a card into the Akitio node, connected it with Thunderbolt 3, booted it up, gave it an access to always allow Thunderbolt 3 ports, and removed our original GPU, plugged in the HDMI and prayed. It turned on. We heard a lot of sounds from the machine, but we got no display. Eventually, a minute or a minute and a half later, the display popped up and the machine was working fine. We then put the hardware RAID into the first slot, so we got 2 slots with X16 on both of them, and we got an external GPU via Thunderbolt 3. The drive was still being detected, so we ran Atto again, and this time we got 18 gigabytes per second, which was what we were expecting, or at least closer to what we were expecting, because I was personally expecting 20 gigabytes per second. It also turns out that Atto has its limitations and it may not be able to run a benchmark properly to give us those speeds. So in theory, we should be getting 20 gigabytes per second, but there is no real way to test it out. So the beast is in no way complete, and we do have 2 GPUs. But again, lucky for us, the motherboard has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. And lucky for us, we do have 2 Akitio node boxes, and we also have 2 2080 Ti's, which will go into both of those external GPU boxes. After getting about 20 gigabytes per second on a single RAID, what do we plan to do? I have really no idea what I'm going to do with all this speed. But we don't have a lot left for the final build of the beast. We just have liquid cooling, and some parts that were required for completing the liquid loop are now finally in the office, and we'll be starting work on the liquid loop, and you'll get the final video for the beast in the coming week. Now guys, if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and become a part of Team iGyaan. Hit the bell notification icon so that you get notified when the final video for the beast comes out. This has been Bharat Nagpal. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. तू हंसते रहेगा तो मैं कैसे अपनी हंसी रोकूंगा? बीच में गिगल करता रहता है, like a little girl. Racist हो जाएगा? नहीं, sexist हो जाएगा. Now मैं बैठो नहीं कर लो.